Welcome back to the So Ready podcast. Today, we're joined by Douglas Brown, the founder of Business Value Booster. So, Douglas is a business advisor, a certified business appraiser, and consultant that's focused on helping business owners increase their value, their scalability, and the sellability of their business. So, he spent years helping business owners understand what really drives business value, and most importantly, what quietly destroys it. So, Douglas, I'm really excited to have you here. Let's get started. Give me a quick overview of your background and what you're focused on today.
Sure. Well, I've been in management consulting roles for many years and slowly moved that into private sector and smaller businesses. I was a business broker for several years. And what I found while I was doing that is, the business brokerage model is you drop by, you call people up, whatever. Hey, you want to sell your business? And of course, the answer is almost always, well, no, not right now. Okay, well, I'll call you back in a year or 6 months or something.
Okay.
Then you go back and the place is either shuttered or the owner's out sick and the business is falling apart or whatever. And they go, why didn't you tell me, why didn't we do this sooner? Well, because you didn't want to think about this sooner. And I started thinking, yeah, I don't like having those conversations when you have these people that are working really hard their whole life on this business, providing a great service. Everybody loves them. And then they have to step away and the whole thing falls apart. No retirement, no nothing. And I thought, I don't like that conversation at all, especially when we don't have it.
Yes.
So I thought, why don't we start having this conversation a bit earlier about, well, are you able to take a vacation even? Can you take a week off from your business or a month off without it falling apart? Because if so, you're probably going to be all right in the long run. But if not, someday is going to catch up with you. So
Yeah.
that's how I started doing this program.
Yeah. I agree. Right. Business owners don't think about exiting their business until it's too late. And the reality is that you're gonna exit your company one day, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. I always love to say that. You have to pass that on to someone someday. And the reality of it is, hey, we sometimes you spend so much time in the woods or the weeds of your business and the maze of the business is that you never look from the top of the tower of, hey, what's really going on? Can I truthfully take a break from my business? Can I truthfully take a vacation, or is this the business really dependent on me to just operate day to day? What do you think the key factors a business owner is really not thinking about until it's too late and it's that time to maybe find investors or even sell the company?
Well, the thing of it is that somebody wants to buy a business, and I don't want to focus all the time on just buying because most owners are going, I'm not going to sell yet. I'm not leaving yet. And they find out actually they are. They just didn't know that. And
Yeah.
but for somebody to want to buy your business, it's either because and this is what we think is going to happen, right? It's such a fantastic business that your business is going to be the thing that's going to catapult somebody else's business into the next level. And so they're going to be this unicorn strategic buyer that's going to pay them 10 times the value. But it's kind of like saying I want to play in the NBA one day. Like, yeah, well, you got about a 1 in a million chance of that happening. What are you going to do
Yeah.
if you're not LeBron James?
Yeah.
And so the buyers that you're really looking at is somebody that wants to buy your business because it's generating the kind of profit that they'd like to be able to take home or redeploy themselves. And it's the kind of business that they can see themselves owning. Now, if you own a business that requires you to be there 60 hours a week, first in, last out, all that stuff. And then you do the math on what you're really paying yourself. Even if you're paying yourself $150,000 a year, but you're basically working two jobs, all of a sudden it's not that much. And if it all depends on your relationships and your ability to actually do the fine tuning on the product to make it just right, the only person who can buy that and replicate it is somebody who's exactly like you, which is pretty much nobody.
Yeah.
So that's what business owners don't think about is if I'm going to build a lasting asset that somebody really wants to make a significant capital investment in, what is it that they're buying? And am I really offering anything other than me? Because if I take me out of the picture, then they're basically being asked to turn over a lot of money for basically nothing.
Yeah, yeah, and I loved your analogy with basketball and LeBron James because you're right. Not everyone is but LeBron James. Most people aren't going to be that freak athlete or the unicorn founder or the person with like the most generational talent. Like, so if you're not LeBron, you have to become the player with the highest IQ, the best fundamentals, the most discipline, the most consistency, and quite frankly, the best team, the best systems, the best decision making process, right? And
Right.
this
And
is
a
how you
lot of
can
people
better.
are getting, they're getting advice from the internet, from coaches, from whatever.
Uh-huh.
And what they're being fed is all these things about what makes a startup company get through the startup hurdles and become a serious company, right? Most actual small business owners are not entrepreneurs, right? they're taking something that's a known product. Even if you're the first ice cream store in your town, you're still an ice cream store, and everybody knows what an ice cream store is. And you may make yourself more than the others by offering some twist on it that nobody heard about, or you got a better environment, but you're not really breaking the mold here. And when you read about all the things that people are talking about online, those are things for startups, and you're going to prove the concept, you're going to pivot, and you're going to scale, and you're going to go viral. No, you're a flower shop. You got to make that work because everybody knows what it is. And maybe you're the unicorn again that comes up with the first intergalactic flower shop or something. But for the rest of those owners, they got to figure out how to make it work for them. And you're right, they're not LeBron James. So what is somebody who's in college and isn't the future LeBron James? Well, they probably wanted to get a degree, first of all, and get a degree in something that might help them get a job because sooner or later they're going to be selling used cars or whatever it is that people that don't crack the pro leagues do. And it's much the same with the business. Your business needs to be solid, but you also need to recognize that you're only going to make so much on it. You're not going to make a $10 million business close payday unless you figure out how to turn this business into a 10 or $15 million business by either scaling it or buying other businesses or a huge success, or by being just a regular business person. But then you need to figure out how to put something away. One of the things I do in my starter kit is have people assess, well, what is it really going to cost you to after the business is gone? You've gotten rid of it one way or another. What's it going to cost you to keep living the lifestyle you think you're entitled to? And they realize that, yeah, if I'm taking home 150,000 a year now, in retirement, it's probably going to cost me the same. People, oh, well, I'm going to downsize when I retire. No, you're not. You're going to start traveling. You're going to start having medical bills you didn't have before. What costs exactly are you incurring in your business that you won't be incurring in the future? It's going to be about the same.
Yeah.
And then you find out that to do that, you got to have a nest egg that's 3, 4, $5 million, of which Social Security maybe accounts for 1.5 million. So where's the rest?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if it's not
I
your
mean,
business, did you put anything in an IRA? Well, not yet, because I'm going to sell the business, make all this money. Well, good luck with that. So we start them out with a simple calculator thing that says, let's get realistic on that.
yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And so, yeah, I genuinely agree. I mean, you hit a lot of nice points there. I'm thinking that one of the first points I want to kind of tap into is that you mentioned different ways that people are increasing their value inside of their business, right? Whether they're growing through acquisition or whether they're growing, within their company. Well, for one, what do you think is the biggest misconception that business owners have about the value of their own business?
One is that somewhere along the line, a lot of CPAs and stuff got told that, well, the value of the business is either, 6 times EBITDA, or if you don't have a good EBITDA, you could still get half of your total gross revenue might be a starting point for evaluation. That's just not true. The half of your revenue thing only applies for startups that don't have any profit. It's sort of a measure. But startups are evaluated in a whole different way altogether because they really are about, does the buyer think they can turn this into a real thing? Whereas a real business, you're basically a money machine. And what is somebody going to pay you for the money machine? It depends on the risk, but it's not going to be more than 2 or 3 times whatever it's making in a given year. So think about that. You sell your business the best you can hope for, unless you just hit the unicorn and you're that one store that somebody needs to really make their chain a national thing. You're talking 2 or 3 years of continuing to work at the business right now and putting all that money away is what you will get for the business. Now think about whether you're going to be able to retire off of that or not. So that, one big misconception. The other one they get is these silver bullet frameworks. If I just adopt a new framework for my business, then it's going to take off and pivot and scale and blah, blah, blah. And all it's going to really do is throw your business into an uproar. It's not hard to eliminate the things that prevent you from being able to sell the business. And it's not hard to think of the things that you would have to do to make it best in class.
Yeah, and I kind of want to stop you there. You say it's not hard to eliminate the things that prevent you from selling a business. Let's dive a little deeper there. Like, what are you referring to? What are the things that prevent people from selling their company?
Sure. So, in my method, the second part, after realizing the realities, the second part is removing the obstacles. And I call them STOP, stop, because it stops the sale. First off is super owner, right, which we kind of talked about. If the owner is the business, But a lot of times, not only is the owner is the business, which is the O part, owner dependency, but also super owner has this attitude that nobody but them could possibly understand this business. Well, if you convey that to an owner, a potential buyer of the business, that nobody is smart enough to understand this business but you, why? Aside from
Yeah.
insulting them, they're going, well, then why would I want to buy it? Because I'm not you. Another thing is taxes, books, licenses. There are a lot of businesses that kill themselves because their CPA tells them if you make more than 23,000 a year W-2, then you're gonna have to pay taxes on it and blah, blah, blah.
Uh-huh.
So you should just inflate your expenses and hide your income so you minimize your taxes. Well, that's nice, but a buyer, again, they're looking for profit. If you've got all the profit hidden under a rock someplace, they're not paying for that. And you go, "Oh, yeah, but I got all this cash income that I can't actually show you." Well, I'm not gonna give you money for something you can't show me.
Uh-huh.
Plus, which you do run the risk with taxes, licenses, and just bad books in general, that at any moment, just by sheer random happenstance, you get audited, and next thing you know, you're in a shambles. And what we tend to forget about is if we're doing stuff like taking money out of the till or not letting it get in or we're faking the books, the employees are gonna find out about this, and now either they're gonna think that's okay, so they're gonna be doing it too, or they're holding you hostage because all
Uh,
they, "Oh, yeah, boss, I know you realize that I shouldn't have done this or that, but be a shame if somebody made a phone call to the revenue service and told them what you're doing here." Now where's that put you as an owner?
yeah.
Especially if you're trying to sell. So that's and then premises is a simple thing we can all do. Look, if your business looks like a place that customers don't want to come to, and it's scary and they lock their doors when they drive by,
Uh,
that's not good. And if the employees feel that way about coming there, that's not good. And usually you can fix it. Now, obviously it is physically where it is. You can't necessarily go rent in the better part of town if that's not what you locked into. But on the other hand, if people are climbing over boxes to get into the shop, we've been in stores like that. Or if the employees and the owners look like they don't give a flip. They're just kind of interrupting their lunch break or something. You've turned off customers, you've turned off buyers. So those are the deal killers right there. But the owner dependency
and
is the
wait,
real one.
before we switch here, I'm sorry, Douglas. When you, I just want to make sure I caught your stop framework. That STOP. Could you just run through that letter by letter for me, just to make sure I caught
Sure,
it?
it's super owner attitude. And nobody me is smart enough to do this kind of thing. Taxes, books, licenses, owner dependency, meaning if I step out the door for a day, the business literally cannot operate for a day. So if I'm an artist, a street artist, right? If I decide not to go out on the street today, the business doesn't generate any money today. And there's lots of businesses like that where the owner is the actual deliverer of the product. Or maybe I have a couple of employees, but they're only allowed to do what I tell them to do. And then P is the premises, and it's not just physical; it's also digital. If you got a website that looks like a 3-year-old did it, somebody comes to look at your business, well, maybe I should buy this business. Well, I mean, these guys are, this is just a hobby for these people. I'm not going to give them money for that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So those are the things that stop a deal. Now, I know. Let's transition into the things that actually add value to the deal.
Well, obviously profit, and that rolls easy off the tongue, just make more profit, right? But there
Yeah.
are many things you can do as soon as you accept the idea that the value of my business is not based on revenue, it's based on profit. And you just
Hmm.
adopt that. If it's not making a profit, it's not a business, it's a hobby, or else it's a charity for the people that work there. And there are things you do differently when, look, if I'm not making a profit, I'm not going to do it. And some people that are in the heart centered businesses, they don't like thinking about it that way. But unless you've got a trust fund behind you, if you're not making a profit on the business, you're going to run out of business eventually. And certainly nobody's going to buy it from you. So that's a big one. So the first step in it is that we do in my program is get through the plus factors profit. What can you do with that? But also, do you have lots of customers or one customer? So if you're an 8A business of some kind, you're dependent on that to get more businesses because you've got some kind of protected status.
Yeah.
Or if your only customer is the government, what happens if, like now, when the government's going, we're going to stop doing a lot of this contracting. Well, where are you? If you've got one big account, Walmart's my customer. Great. Well, what happens when Walmart decides they don't want to carry your line of product anymore? Not because anything you did, just they're going to do something else now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like what you're referencing here is something that's called a concentration risk. So it's just concentration risk is just when too much of the business is relying on one thing, whether that's the founder or an employee or, like you said, a customer, an account, a platform. So creating operational risk or even financial risk just because just if that dependency fails. And so how can business owners like avoid that? Because of course a startup, they're going to have a lot of dependencies, whether it's on a singular account, a singular founder, a singular staff member. How are you guys and what are your suggestions to help someone overcome those things?
So obviously, with a startup, at some point you got to convert over from being a startup to a sustainable business, right? So yeah, when you're a startup, you do what you got to do, and it's where a lot of business owners get into good habits at that time because they're bootstrapping, right? Every penny counts and all that. But when you're in a regular business with regular employees, and especially if you're thinking about how am I going to get somebody else to want to buy this business and give me actual money for it, then I have to have that mindset that I'm giving them something to buy. So the process is, for example, you don't have to exhaustively document. And if you've got a 500-page process manual, you're probably only following 30 pages of it, and the rest is out of date 3 years ago. But if you have, I mean, the way I set it as a test is, look, in my program, after 90 days, you can step away for a week. And some stuff's going to go wrong, but nothing too dramatic if you pick the right things to fix first. And eventually, after a year or so, you should be able to go for a month pretty much disconnected and the business operates. If it can do that, it's because the processes are known. They don't depend on you to keep pushing people in the right direction to make them happen. They know how to do them. You can get the employees to document in a loose way how they do them. And that way, if you have a turnover, you've got something to turn to so you're not spending a third of your time retraining people all the time. So it's very, very critical. And if an owner can make the commitment to be away for a while and figure out what they got to do to make that possible, then many of these things sort themselves out. Not today, but over a period of weeks and months, they get to where they can get there. And I would submit that any owner that can take off for 30 days, sort of whenever they want to, is going to be in that best in class in their niche. They're not going to be the
Yeah.
next Google, but they're probably going to be the ice cream shop in town that a person who wants to buy an ice cream shop would decide to buy.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love it, and I love to like kind of transition here as well. Like I think you've been able to add a lot of value into like those red flags and things that are value killers, and also those things that are value boosters, right? And actually get a company to become so ready. I love to kind of understand a bit of what's your perspective on implementing AI into help a customer or a business owner kind of get those dependencies, away from them. And even if they don't really have, they're at that point of transitioning, and they're like, okay, I can scale through people and human capital. And how do you think AI is really impacting how people or businesses are being valued currently?
Well, the AI itself will be the tool for the selling owner to demonstrate that they have a process. So if I'm a buyer, I don't care if you got AI or not, as long as your business knows how it operates and it's operating smoothly. If AI helps with that, great. If I'm demonstrating higher margins because my AI is enabling me to deliver a superior product or superior service, or because the AI is enabling the customer to self serve things that otherwise I would have had two or three staff members answering the phones for or something, that'll prove itself out in the margins. So it's not that your AI is going to be a selling point as such. It's going to be your AI is creating the margins, or it's enabling the processes by which I can see that your business doesn't require constant hand holding, and I'm willing to pay for that.
Yeah. No, got it. Got it. Yeah, the transferability aspect, the lack of dependency on the founder, the lack of dependency on the team, and obviously the just proper documentation is what it all like just dials down to at the end of the day. And so, Douglas, I really want to shift gears for a second. We ask every founder, advisor, operator that comes to the podcast these questions because we're actually building a data set that around how high level operators and decision makers think when it comes to building companies. So it's only 5 questions. We call this the operator stack. Okay, I'm gonna shoot you a question. You give me a direct answer. Are you ready?
Okay.
Cool. So the
It was
first
not
question here is
rehearsed, so I couldn't miss one, right?
no. Yeah, I mean you definitely have the answers to these. The first question I have here is like when you're making a high stakes decision, what's the first principle or framework that you rely on?
So that should be a simple answer. The first thing you should be relying on is how is this going to benefit the company?
Okay.
But at the same time, you also have a gut feel as to, I just don't like this. And if you don't, then you shouldn't do it.
Okay. Okay. And so that's more like it sounds like your principle and framework is heavily reliant on like the operator's perspective rather than, some founders may be super reliant on data. Like, hey, if the data says this, then do that, right? And they allow the data to lead. Give me a little bit more insight as to why, your perspective is that way.
Because the data may even be accurate, but it kind of
Mhm.
goes back to the LeBron James discussion we were having. Steve Jobs was right about what he was doing. I could not do that. So you can tell me all the data you want about how Apple did something, but it's not going to work for me. So there's times when you gotta say, yeah, that data, I'm sure it's true, but it's not for me. But it would be good if you then went out, okay, well, go get your own set of data then and market test the thing you want to do, make sure it's going to work. That would be a good idea.
Understood. Okay, cool. So, okay, what's the most common bottleneck that you see consistently that prevents companies from scaling effectively?
It's always reluctance to hire.
Okay.
And if you do that because you don't have enough capital, that's always a problem. But it's still, especially if you've bootstrapped up from a startup, you hate hiring people because, well, I know how to do that. Why would I hire somebody to do it? Until you realize as the owner that you're not the most overpaid hourly employee. You're actually the owner and you have owner things you should be doing. And if you don't hire somebody to mop the floor and you do it yourself, that's nice. So you're paying yourself $6 an hour for that when you should have been paying yourself $100 an hour to go get a new customer.
You're right. Hiring that talent. Actually, this leads into the next question here. W- When it comes to evaluating the proper leadership or teams, like what's one signal that you rely on that tells you that someone's A plus talent?
You mean the individuals or if the company
Eh,
has it?
The
So, I mean,
individual. If you're
yeah,
evaluating a person, yeah.
obviously they have to know what it is that they're doing because if
Okay.
not, they can be replaced, right? You're going to want to look at what role do they actually play in the company.
Okay.
So they may be very highly talented at what they do, but really at what they do, you can get almost anywhere. So,
Mm.
they're a whiz bang accountant and they do the books of the company. You don't want to throw that out the door for no reason, but you can get one of those almost anywhere. If what it is they've got this network of relationships and things that are really making the sales effort flow and stuff like that, that's definitely a talent you want to retain. But you also got to take steps to make sure you do retain them. And people say, well, get them on an NDA right away or get them on, some kind of deal. That's nice. But in my experience, those pieces of paper aren't worth too much. And you got to find ways to make them want to continue working with you.
Yeah, you're right. You're always selling as a founder. You have to sell the people that even your own employees. You're selling your
Right.
employees. You're selling your offer. Yeah, I mean, everyone has to be sold. You're gonna sell. You're gonna sell. Investors if you want to raise. You have to. You have to sell the new buyer if you're wanting to sell your company. You have to sell the people who are gonna be part of your team, man. Like you have to sell them on the vision and the goal of the entire company. And I think sometimes you're right, founders really missed the mark there. So I have 2 more questions for you here. If you had to double the value of a company or business within 12 months, where would you focus first?
Kind of depends on how much money I've got because this
Okay.
is something a lot of business owners don't think about. If you had to double the value of your company, the easiest way to do it is go down to the SBA, talk to them, or talk to your bank, and go buy another company that's got the same volume as yours. Now you're double. And assuming that there's some synergy there, the business is probably worth more than the two of you put together. So that's an avenue that we tend not to think about. So well, what if
Yeah.
I, really redouble my sales effort and do all this? Well, why don't you just take somebody else's sales effort and use that? If I didn't have the funds to do that, or I, was afraid to or whatever, you have to focus on the fact that it's the profit margin that makes the value. There are ways to increase your revenues and your profit margins without making exorbitant numbers of additional sales. You can increase your prices. You
Yeah.
can improve the margin on what you are selling by same product, but you're building it better, smarter. This is where AI can come in, for example. If I've got a product that's working and I can AIify it, and it sounds harsh, but if I got 4 people delivering it and I can turn it into an AI thing, that's some serious savings right there. So there's focusing on the profit line is the best way to double the value of the company rather than trying to figure out how to double the number of customers to buy the same stuff you've already been trying to sell all along.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you're right, you're right. And, like, how can we increase what we're getting what we're able to retain per sale per
Yep.
sale? How can we increase the lifetime value of each customer? How can we have that customer return? That's a way to double or increase the amount of money that you're getting per. customer that you acquire. So I love that stance. And lastly, here, what's a mistake that you see business owners repeat over and over again that cost them the most?
Honestly, it's assuming that they have all the time in the world to figure out the long game. So I call it, the someday syndrome. When I'm busy mopping up after customer issues and I'm dealing with employees didn't show up today or whatever, it's really hard to say, okay, I'm going to put some time away now to think about what happens with this company in the long term. In the shorter term, well, what would you have to do to be able to take a vacation? That's kind of seems like an overhead function. I don't want to invest in that. I'll do that someday when things settle down, but those things don't happen. That someday when nothing's happening, that someday doesn't come. What does come is the someday that says you get sick, you get tired of doing this, you get old, you have, the business changes in a way you don't like, whatever. Now you want to get out of the business and you can't. And that's the thing that people forget about is look, someday is not, you don't choose someday chooses you. So you need to
Oh,
be ready for when it comes.
you're right. You do not choose someday. Someday chooses you. So be ready for when it comes. Douglas, this was an extremely valuable podcast. I really enjoyed your perspective around how businesses are losing value and how they're increasing value and what actually creates long term business value versus what owners think increases their value. So I think a lot of people are focused more on revenue growth, but not enough on building businesses that are actually operationally scalable or transferable or actually attractive to buyers. And so for anyone listening, we'll link everything below so you can check out what Douglas and Business Value Booster are working on. I really appreciate you for coming on.
Great. It's been a good time. I appreciate it.